So at this time, instead of turning off your cell phones, just put them on vibrate, and we encourage you to check into this event on Facebook and by searching the Jew with Dreidel Tattoo, and please feel free to take pictures, tweet everyone you know that you're here, and tell all your friends about us, so thank you. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speakers for the evening, Rabbi Yael Ridberg and Kyle Chambers, our tattooed Jew. They're right here. So welcome both of you. So our rabbi is a 1997 graduate of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and she served for 2 years at the first Marshall T. Mayer Rabbinic Fellow at Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in New York. And Rabbi Ridberg served as the president of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association, as a member of the Rabbinical Council of the New Israel Fund, and at the board of Plaza Jewish Community Chapel. Kyle is the co-director of counseling staff at Talit Nation, a program designed to prepare young Jewish teens for life as a young Jewish adult. His first tattoo was about 8 years ago, and it's in Hebrew. He has a handful of tattoos that are branches of his Jewish faith, and his most recent being an owl carrying a chamsa on his chest. So please help me welcome both the rabbi and Kyle Chambers. Thank you.
Tattoos, and you can be buried in a cemetery. So let's just say that right up front. But I want to take a few minutes and just tell you how it is that Jewish tradition says that we cannot have tattoos. I did say that Jews have them. I didn't necessarily say that was, okay according to the most traditional sources. But so in the book of Leviticus, third book of the Torah, the book that is all about laws and the sacrificial system and all about how Jews, or Israelites actually, were attempting to access God. Right? So if you think about the Torah as a whole, right, Genesis is this prehistoric story of creation and paradise, and then paradise lost, and then the matriarchs and the patriarchs of our tradition, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and it's all about a family, and how that family, in all of its dysfunction, manages to marry and have children and more children, deceive one another some more, and eventually become a great and populous nation after they went down to Egypt, sojourned there for a little while, then a pharaoh arose, didn't know anything about this, enslaved our people for 400 years or something close to that. Then, in the middle of all this great action of the Jews being liberated from Egypt and building a tabernacle so that God could dwell among the people, in comes Leviticus. A system of holiness, a code by which the Israelites were to, once they entered into the promised land, were going to go about understanding themselves as a people. And I say that it's inserted because, of course, biblical scholars understand that Leviticus is a later book. And if you go next to the book of Numbers, it kind of follows Exodus in the narrative. But in Leviticus, in chapters 18 and 19, in two portions in specific called Acharei Mot, which means after the death of Aaron's sons, and Kedoshim, which is the holiness code, we find a number of laws, some of which are really moving to us. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't place a stumbling block before the blind. Don't curse the deaf. You are holy because I, your God, am holy. Wonderful verses that we hold up and we say, this is what it is to be a Jew. Well, in those same chapters, we also find the prohibition against homosexuality. We find the prohibitions against incest and other kinds of relationships that we should avoid. And we find in chapter 19, verse 28, you shall not make gashes in your flesh for the dead, or incise any marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. And pretty much every law in the book of Leviticus in this section in Kedoshim talks about everything that we're doing, every teaching that I'm giving you. God is sort of saying to Moses, every teaching that the people are going to receive, you should do, because by doing them, you who are created in the image of God, you are holy because I am holy. So if I, God, the idea is if I am giving you this law that says don't mark yourself, in order to be godly, don't mark yourself. That by being a whole person, that's the notion here, that by cutting yourself or by marking yourself in some way, you change the wholeness of your being. That's the law. Don't do it. It's very clear. And there are lots of laws in the Torah that are very clear in the sense that we don't have to mince words. It's not crying out, interpret me, I don't understand what it means. It says, don't do it. So that's the prohibition. That is the biblical prohibition. End of story. Over history, this verse in the Torah also comes to testify, if you will, against the practices of idolatrous nations. So the second way to read the Holiness Code, and this is also how very often we read some of the other prohibitions, is that it was a way to compare or to keep the Israelites as an Israelite nation, not sort of interfacing with these other, some pagan, some idolatrous communities that perhaps, or perhaps not, did these actions. Right? So if you're going to be a Jew, if you're going to be an Israelite, and you're not going to be the Canaanite or the Moabite or the other nations of the community that were understood to be more idolatrous, then you're not going to do these things because, you know what, they probably do it, and you don't want to do what they do. And that's how it began to sort of snowball in rabbinic tradition to be an idolatrous action. That if you mark yourself, you are in some way treating your body or creating something on your body for worship. And that wasn't okay because we're monotheistic people and God is not anywhere but everywhere. So throughout our history, up until, circa 1939, the question of marking yourself with tattoos was clearly prohibited in the Torah, clearly understood by the rabbis in the Midrash and in the Mishnah and the Talmud to be something that was akin to an idolatrous practice, and that's why it was prohibited. Come World War II, and suddenly the notion of a tattoo takes on a whole different meaning. And it's imposed upon Jews. Right? It's not you deciding, as she said, right, oh, I like number 32, right, and I'm going to go and have this done. It was an imposition, and it was a marking, and it was an oppressive marking. Interestingly, I would say that there are a number of things today coming out of a post-Holocaust world, I think, that people take on as a kind of davka. Davka means in Hebrew, like, just because. And it was even alluded to in the film a little bit. The sort of like, you know what, if it was okay for my ancestors, my grandparents, who were survivors, who are survivors, to have a tattoo, then by God, it's okay for me too. Then I'm going to choose to do it, and I'm going to appropriate, right, this action for myself. I've heard this also, by the way, when talking about cremation. Cremation is also something that is not permitted according to Jewish law, in fact, for the same kinds of reasons. You shouldn't desecrate the body, right? And by burning the body, even after death when you won't know about it, but burning the body undermines the godly nature of the human being. But people will say, if my grandparents or great-grandparents who were killed in Auschwitz and were, incinerated in those ovens, if it was, for them, then I'm going to do it for myself. Again, a dafka, turning it over on its head. There are no prohibitions in Jewish law around tattoos that are imposed upon you. If you were a survivor of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, and you have a tattoo on your arm, no one is going to say to you, that is against Jewish law. Or if they do, we got much bigger problems. The same is also true for tattoos that are put on people when they have to have radiation for cancer treatment. You may not know this, but when someone goes through radiation treatment, in order for the radiation to go exactly in the place where they want it to go, the person is tattooed, small, tiny little point, but tattooed, so that that's within the place of the radiation. But this is not prohibited in the sense of you are not choosing to mark yourself. I started off by saying that, two things are true. That Jews get tattoos, and Jews are buried in Jewish cemeteries with tattoos. I don't know where that, urban myth legend emerged. Probably from some parent who just really didn't want their kid to do anything like get a tattoo. Can't you hear them? No, you won't be able to be buried. I mean, I can hear it, Oh no, you're not going to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, I mean, it's not true. It's not true. Because if I asked any person who asked me that, if they could be buried in a Jewish cemetery, if I said, and how often have you had shrimp? Right? And do you celebrate Shabbat? And do you do any number of the 613 mitzvot? And the answer was no. Then I would have to say, well, this is not it's a mitzvah that you shouldn't do this. But if this is something you don't do, and you don't celebrate Shabbat, and you don't keep kosher, and, well, this isn't going to be the singular thing that's going to keep you out of a Jewish cemetery. And none of those other things do either, by the way. Nobody asks you. Again, and if they do, come tell me, because that's a funeral home and a cemetery you don't want to be buried in. They're asking. So, I mean, this is just an excerpt of the film that I'm really I want to be able to see the rest of it, because what's not in the film, of course, are the rabbinic voices, the Jewish leaders, the parents, the questions that we might have as to the why, which is, I know we're going to get to Kyle in just a minute, which is about the why, the what is the motivation, and not just for Jews. I mean, I grew up, nice Jewish girl in suburbs of Washington, D.C. Like, rebelling was, I don't know, yelling at my mother. My sister, when she got a tattoo, I don't think it was any rebellious thing, and it was when she was in college, and it was this very kind of stylized image of a woman's body, and it's on the inside of her ankle, But it would never occur to me. I hate needles, I hate them. So it would never occur to me to do this. So my questions are all about what is the motivation that happens? What happens when you say to yourself, I want to mark myself with something, be Jewish, not Jewish. Who is it for? Is it for me? Is it for somebody else? I actually, as I was doing the research for tonight, I came across actually an Israeli little video clip on Hebrew tattoos. In other words, how to be grammatically correct in your tattooing. Really. Because, and the woman is saying, well, it's a question. If you are saying, for example, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine, right, from the Song of Songs. When you tattoo it, do you want to say, Ani ledodi, like I am for my beloved, or do you want someone to read it and say it and know it that it's about them? Right? And it was this whole thing about how to be grammatically correct in your language. So what is the motivation? Is it for somebody else? Is it for you? Of course it matters if you put it somewhere where no one else is going to see but you, or someone very close to you. That's one symbol. If you're going to show the world, as this woman clearly is not just showing the world, she's showing the next world, too. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean that's, it's a very particular approach for someone to say that this is how I want to be seen, literally. I want people to see my tattoos before, in effect, they see me, or perhaps it's the one and the same. So I, as a rabbi, as a person, as a sort of a psychologically oriented, spiritually oriented person, I want to understand the inside motivation, because there are so many ways for us to express ourselves, so many ways to stand up for ourselves as Jews, as men, as women. There are so many ways to be counted in the world that this is a really intriguing one to me, because it is permanent insofar as you can't wash it off. And the degree to which so many people, Jews and non-Jews, later in their life, after some perhaps less than aware moment that they had, oh yeah, let's go get a tattoo, 30 years later, when their child is saying to them, well, what do you mean? You have a tattoo, and they can't quite bring themselves to explain that they didn't do it for any real reason, and they don't really want them to do it, or they're saying, I wish I never did it. So the final word that I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to Kyle to share, is I really want to listen to him, is to just go back to this question about the sacredness of the body, or the sort of the holiness of the body, and this vessel that each one of us is given temporarily. Right? We don't get this, we have this on loan, this body. And for as long as we're going to be in this world, right, it's up to us to keep it in the best shape that we can, whether that's about health or whether that's about what we put in our body as opposed to what comes out of our body. And so it is a question to me about what are the ways in which we honor our bodies. And this to me fits into a long conversation about the ways that youth today and men and women today do and don't take care of themselves, and how this can be seen positively and how we know it can also be seen negatively is really a matter of opinion. It's not for me to tell you how to think about this. You have your own opinions. I'm looking forward to hearing them. But from a Jewish perspective, the notion that we are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, in some way, whatever your concept of God is, the question is, what does it do? What does it mean when you change the body that you've been given in one way or another, in an inalterable way? And no one can answer for sure. We can only know what it is to listen to one another and learn what brings us to this conversation. So thank you all very much.
So I guess to get it started, I should really just discuss when it started for me as far as tattoos came into my life. And ironically, it started really young. This is kind of a fun story. I was in 4th grade, literally 4th grade, and my mother and I were walking. She asked, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday? It's coming up, what do you want?" I looked at her and I said, "Well, my ears pierced, I want a tattoo." 4th grade, what is that, 10 years old, and I'm already talking about, I really don't know why I knew either of those to be a necessity, especially in 4th grade. It wasn't like, my mother has one tiny little tattoo that I never really knew about until I actually started getting tattooed. The people I was around, you're a 4th grader, how many of them have tattoos or piercings, especially the men? So it was just so strange to me reflecting on that at that young age I wanted something along those lines. Then you fast forward a few years, and now I'm 18 and I can do these things. Well, at that point I was surrounded by it. I mean, my siblings have them, my cousins, all my friends are starting to get theirs. Even in high school, kids would show up and they'd have these awesome flames on their arms, and you're like, "You're so cool, bro." and now you look at them like, I'm so grateful I didn't do that to myself. But then again, so the first thing I figured to myself was, well, why don't I go talk to my rabbi? Let's see what he has to say about it. Because from a very, very early start, my relationship with my rabbi was based off of question things and ask questions, right? Don't be afraid to voice your own opinion and try to get a response. Try to see, what does it really mean? So I went to my rabbi, I asked him, "Hey, what's the scoop? What's the deal with this? I've always been interested. I'm probably going to do it regardless. I have no shame with that. So what is it from a Jewish perspective, from a text perspective?" And we sat there for about 3 hours discussing, and I pretty much was just arguing with him at that point because I was 18 and I had nothing better to do. And then at the end of it, it came down to, well, hey, can you write this out for me? Because I don't know how to write Hebrew, and I wanted to get ahava on my back. So sure enough, he's like, "Well, I don't want you to, but I'm not going to stop you, and I might as well make sure you do it the right way." As opposed to some other word that means like Chinese food is awesome, which it is. So he wrote it out for me. I went down, and there it was, my first tattoo. At the time, when I'm sitting in the chair and they started pulling the first line, I was thinking, yeah, this is probably the only one I'll do. I'm okay anymore. This is it. And about 40 minutes later, when he finished, I was like, okay, well, what else can I get? It was over. I was hooked. That's what it was. I was just ready to go. I was still 18 when I got my next one, which was Chai, and 18, life, the whole shebang. It just had a meaning. Everything had a meaning. So now that I'm 25 and my collection has vastly expanded, and I have children asking about them, My tattoos have all new meanings. Even the ones I've had since I got the first 4 letters on my back, they've all adapted, they've all evolved in their own right. And I think that's a natural process for anyone growing into adulthood. You're going to change, you're going to see the world a different way, and you're going to look at yourself differently. If you really sit and think about who you are now versus when you were 18, or pick an age, go ahead, and you're a very different person than when you started. So a lot of aspects of your life change, and you look at them very differently. So each of my tattoos has its original meaning, and they all have new meanings. They all bring different joys to my life. Some of them are reflections of my children. I've got my children's footprints going down my ribs. Probably the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life, by the way, so there's that. But they all have some sort of story. They all mean something, and I don't think I could go another day without the tattoos I have. Yes, I have a laundry list of tattoos I will be getting in my lifetime. Unfortunately, that's just not something I'm looking to get. It means so much to me within each tattoo. They each have such a strong story, such a strong meaning to me, that I want that. I want to decorate myself. That's what it comes down to for me. A tattoo isn't just me, putting color in my skin and just filling in the lines like a coloring book. I'm not a coloring book. I like to think of myself, my body, as a work of art. I like to think that God created me to be the most beautiful canvas in the world, and that's exactly what I am. With or without my tattoos, that is what I am. I'm gorgeous. I'm fantastic. I love me. I'm awesome. and so I'm just adding to it, just like you would hang a painting in your house, or whatever adornments we have for just a physical representation of beauty and things like that. For me, it's a way to allow myself to express myself in other mediums. People are going to walk down the street, they're going to see you, and they're not going to take 2 seconds to talk to you, regardless of your tattoos or not. It's just common law to walk by somebody and not bother them. But if I have something on my arm, on my wrist, wherever it be, and someone sees it, it evokes thought. It makes them realize that there's something beyond just a person walking down the street. Whether they think it's good or bad, that's their problem. I'm not concerned. But it's definitely something that I appreciate, and I'm so grateful that we're in a modern society where tattoos, to an extent, are much more acceptable. And now, instead of being a forced marking, someone doing it to you because they want to identify you for yourself, or someone doing it to themselves because they want to inflict pain, now it's done to express yourself, to enjoy the body that you're given, and to decorate yourself, in all honesty. So I think when it comes to the text, I try to think of the context of it. When was this written, and what was the idea when they were writing it? Was it a time when people were getting tattoos because it was awesome, or was it a time when people were getting tattoos because they didn't necessarily want to, they had to, or it was some sort of obligated marking, or they were even trying to inflict pain? So I think the text is what it is. I mean, like Rabbi said, you can't change it. It is no means no. That's, so that's what it is. But for me, being raised in a Jewish community of ask questions and question everything, my first question was, but why? Why can't I? It's a decoration. And of course, the answer, just like Rabbi had mentioned, well, that's not what God put you here for. It's not to ruin what He gave you, and I get that. So for me, again, the tattoo process and the stories behind each of them, they're all just a way for me to express myself, regardless of who's looking. Even when I take my shirt off and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I get excited about every one I have. They all share a special memory for myself, and I look at them quite frequently. It's kind of strange, actually. But I enjoy looking at them because they remind me of something about either myself or an experience I had. So that's kind of who I am. Real quick, who actually has tattoos in the room? I don't know. So obviously you guys, most of you, I would assume, were not obligated to get your tattoo, and I'm sure the tattoo or tattoos all have a story, and I think we're all kind of here with that same concept in mind. So I think at this point we make it an open forum?
Yeah, we've got some mics up here, and we're going to open the floor up to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions or comments, concerns, or goodwill, raise your hand and we'll go around.
What?
Go on.
Not a single question?
Yeah.
Really?
I think they're waiting for us.
Oh, we'll go you and then right
Yes.
now.
Oh, mine's an easy one. Did your mom get you the tattoo in 4th grade?
Ask her right next to you.
Oh, in the 4th grade, no.
That's my mother.
He got his ears pierced. He was 18 and I paid for his
Yeah,
first
so
tattoo.
in 4th grade, I actually did get my ears pierced. They weren't this big then. I did that later. But I mean, she kind of gave me that look, like, really? Tattoo and piercing? You're ridiculous. So, but she did settle with, let's cause the most minimal amount of damage at that time.
We have one over.
Yes.
I would argue that facelifts and breast implants and the like fall into a similar category. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, actually, someone asked me about this once. Everything is about motivation, right? So what is the intention behind anything that we do, right? There are lots of reasons why women in particular, but people might choose plastic surgery to improve, alter, augment, repair, reconstruct their bodies for lots of reasons. And I think that somebody asked me this because they were contemplating some kind of plastic surgery, and they had heard that, if you had a tattoo, you can't get buried in a Jewish cemetery, so they wondered about, what about, plastic surgery? Serious question. And I said, well, see the first one, it's not true, so there's no problem there. So I think it's all about intention. So I wouldn't presume to say that someone who wants to decorate their body is doing something less profound than feeling better about themselves because of whatever toll time has taken on their bodies. Within the plastic surgery realm, of course, there's lots of reasons that people have plastic surgery for health reasons. Non-medical, understand. So, I can't presume that someone who decides that, for example, they would like to augment their breasts or, even out their lines is any less important than someone who wants to commemorate, their child's birth, on their body. Who am I to judge? So there's no judgment here. It's really about what's going on for you. And asking yourself, and I would say this to a person who's contemplating plastic surgery too, what do you hope to gain that you currently don't have from this experience? Right? What is it that you are hoping, what are you going to feel afterwards? Or what do you anticipate feeling afterwards? And if you can't answer the question, well, then you have to really think seriously about any of this stuff, because it isn't simple. You're marking your skin. There's infection. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But I think it really is about, what are you doing this for? And then going from there as a result of that and seeing, is this really the best way that I can find to express this thing or this idea or desire that I have?
Actually, if I could piggyback on that a little bit, one of the strangest things as far as cosmetic surgery, when it goes into tattooing, is there is actually cosmetic tattooing. A lot of ladies will have their eyelids or their eyebrows, things like that. The good thing of this has been so much fun for me to use this against certain people in my family. Mainly my grandmother, old-time Jew from New York, just the typical, oy, there's nothing more to her than, you're just not doing it right. So she has actually had her eyebrows done numerous times, and I understand the fact that for her it's cosmetic. It's because she's aged a little, so it's harder to get in those little areas without stabbing yourself in the face. I get that. So her argument was, anytime I showed her a new tattoo, was like, why are you doing that to yourself? And I would just look at her. You've done it also. You haven't done anything different. Mine just happens to be the same size as my hand, or mine's much clearer that it's a tattoo. You know, yours is hidden because people just think you did your makeup really well.
She's also been one to say that he won't be buried.
Oh, she's the one who's always told me, you're never going to get buried in a Jewish cemetery. You're ruining your life. So,
We have a question in the back and then
Okay.
one up here.
All right, I have a question. Let's talk about Jewish tattoos specifically. I had a Jewish boyfriend who liked to tattoo, but he had Neptune of the sea, and he had birds going south and west. I got dizzy like waking up next to him. It was trouble. But never chose a Jewish symbol. What are we saying about our Judaism? Are we comfortable with our Judaism? I know this is a little psychological, but uncomfortable, coming to terms with it? What's that about?
for me, it was in a great way for me to express myself, to really actually confirm myself as a Jew. I got into Judaism a little bit later in life. I was about 14 years old. I started going to confirmation class, and I've progressed into youth programs and directors within that. For me, when I got my first tattoo, and it being a Jewish tattoo, it was just my way of saying how proud I am, how grateful I am that I get to live this life and I get to be Jewish. And it was an easy way for me to show people, look, this is who I am, and you're not going to change me. You're not going to affect me. I'm honored and privileged to be the Jewish man that I am.
And wearing a Star of David didn't do it for you.
Well, or kippah, or outside.
No, I mean that's a serious. I mean that's a serious question. I mean, you can wear a Magen David, you could wear a Hamsa, the hand. You could wear a mezuzah,
I do wear them.
Yeah. So what's different? What's different?
It's mine. I get to carry it. I can't lose it. I'm a very forgetful person. You can ask my wife. She's my secretary. I would lose it. I was never good with it. And I don't want to wear jewelry any more than I have to. My wedding ring, when I first got it, was the most heavy, awkward piece of metal I've ever had in my life. Now, obviously, it's my best friend. I can do anything without it. But the difference between jewelry and a tattoo is I'm the only one who has my tattoo. Yes, there's different interpretations of it. Everyone has some sort of stylized version of it. But that one's mine. You can duplicate the same necklace, the same bracelet, the same ring. You can duplicate all that very easily. So mine is mine.
Okay. We have a question up here.
Yeah, I want to explore sort of the gradients and shades of marking the body or modifying the body. I noticed that you wear earrings.
Right.
Where does that fall in that spectrum?
Yeah.
Not only do I got my second. I have a second pierced, right, that I don't wear anymore. And when I got it done, I was living in Israel for a year. I was 15 years old, and it was literally. Do you guys remember we used to have aerograms? So it was literally these.
We remember.
Yes, the old folks in the room, right? Aerograms. But we used to send letters. Remember those letters? We used to send them overseas, and they used to take 2 weeks. Anyway, the very last line of the aerogram that I sent to my parents was, "Oh, and by the way, I went to Kiryat Shmona and I got a second hole in my ear," because I didn't think that they were gonna, be happy about it. Well, I don't have a good answer, except that, I could argue, well, this looks nicer. That's pretty. I mean, that's pretty judgmental. I'm not saying that for me. I'm not saying that like me, Yael, is saying that. I'm saying like that's the only answer that there can be. That like somehow it's attractive, and people would say, oh well, tattoos they're not as attractive. It's totally a subjective thing. I'm not saying it one way or the other, but somehow ear piercing on women in particular, 2 holes, not 3, 4, 5, and you have to, but 2 holes have been something that has been forever, it seems.
So is it just about cultural norms rather than?
I think that it's a much more acceptable form, and it doesn't look like, quote, gashes in the body, even though that it is, right? Like there was what do they call it? Like the gun that they put the hole in your ear with, right? And it hurt, and my oldest daughter, when she had her ears pierced, like it got infected. I mean, it was awful, Yes, we do things to our bodies. I'm a Reconstructionist rabbi. God for me is not a supernatural being that's going to evaluate my life and condemn me or extol me in one direction or the other. God for me is the force with which I operate in the world, and so am I displeasing God by wearing earrings? I don't really think God has a perception of what I do. But I don't want to do things to myself more than is necessary. I guess I have a certain limitation that I'm willing to do for me, and it's just me, right? I'm not going for Botox, right? Like, I like my laugh lines. I have this line when I see it all the time now, from just squinting, and I think, oh, I could just get rid of that, and then I think, no, that's the part of me that everybody says, oh yeah, she thinks, right? So I just think it's about moderation and what you think about your body and how you treat your body.
We've got a question in the back and then one up there.
I was just going to say, question or comment, I'm not sure.
Shout it out.
To me, honoring the body, drinking a soda, which is sugar and terrible for you, a lot more harmful than putting a tattoo on, which actually doesn't affect you. So if we're saying honoring your body and drinking soda is one.
Yes, there's a list as long as my arm of the things that we could talk about. What is the best way to treat? Sorry?
It's a little longer than
Probably. My arm's kind of short. But yes, I mean, if what we're really talking about is the temple of the body, then there are lots of things that are much more harmful and much more detrimental, not only to us, but to the next generation that might come forth from us, should we choose to do that. And a tattoo is not in that category.
Sorry, I just had a question. According to the religious room, are you allowed to pierce ears?
I think that there are many Orthodox women with pierced ears, but I would also note that I have also seen many in the Hasidic community in particular that are not piercing their ears but have clip earrings. Whether that fits into this, I can't say. I'm not in that community, but anything can be taken to the nth degree as to again, it's about your intention, and it's about what is the kavanah? That's the word in Hebrew. What is the intention, the kavanah behind your actions? What are you trying to accomplish for yourself? Either by ear piercing or by tattooing or, drinking Coke. I don't know what the point of drinking Coke is actually, but, but I understand that people do it, and no judgment.
Yes, you.
Me? Oh, okay. Well, I hope she doesn't mind me bringing her into this, but my daughter, sitting next to me, she has a tattoo. And she's gotten a couple, and I have mixed feelings. I'm a daughter. Her grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and I gave her the speech, that why she shouldn't have it. And one of her remarks to me was about how things have changed, and progress, and how time has changed. And I think back to when these laws were written, and in those days, were you allowed to be cut on by a surgeon? Like, look at people that have open heart surgery and have these giant scars, and I imagine that, they are allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. And also I think back to, I don't know if any of you older people in the audience would remember, but there was a movie out called The Illustrated Man, and it was like the scariest sci-fi movie, because the guy was tattooed every inch of his body, but each tattoo would come alive and tell a story in the movie. And I remember at that time, so that had to have been like probably 40 some years ago that I saw it, I was horrified. And now, of course, we see people, and like the girl in the film, that walk down the street all the time with tattoos covering their body, and if you get to know these people, they're the most wonderful people, and they're not evil and scary, and their tattoos do have meaning to them, and they do see it as art. And that's kind of why I brought my daughter into the story, unwillingly or not, that she has always been a very creative, artistic person, and art and color and all of that has always been extremely meaningful to her. And I don't think when she got the tattoos that she thought of it at all as defiling her body. I think she feels that she is decorating it just sort of as an honor of what God has given her. And one of her tattoos is the Star of David. And her father, who is Jewish, he meditates. He's Jewish, but he meditates and follows the teachings of the Hindus. So she also has an Om symbol next to the Star of David. And she has her roots of a tree, and most recently she got a rather large tattoo, and that was kind of like shocking to me. And of course no one in the family wanted her to get a big tattoo. And there are people in the family that have said to her, don't show Aunt so-and-so, and, because she'll really freak out. And, my aunt has even said, oh, if your mother knew, because she has passed away, that, she would not want, to get tattoos. But, so strangely enough, we came home from visiting with her relatives after she had gotten the tattoo, and she started to rethink, oh my God, did I do the wrong thing? And now it's too late because it's there. And my mother had written a beautiful poem about her experience during the Holocaust, and she was young. She was like 12 to 16 when she was in the camps, and she wrote a poem about the youth that she never had, and she wrote about a bird that sits on a tree, the branches of the tree, and how the bird symbolized her youth, and that it was going to wait for her for the day that she would be one with her youth again. And anyway, not to bore you with all the details, but as the poem went on, we read it that night, and we sat there and wept because the tattoo she got was almost exactly what my mother's poem described. And so it actually turned into something that was very spiritual and very meaningful for both of us. And do you want to add anything?
My first tattoo that's on my ankle is a cherry blossom tree that represents my family tree, and in the roots are the Star of David and the Om symbol. And part of the reason I got that is I grew up over in East County, San Diego, which I'm not saying anything bad about people who live in East County or anything like that. But everybody there that I grew up around, Jewish means stupid or shisty or whatever to them. So nobody knew that I was Jewish ever. I didn't really talk about it. I was kind of scared sometimes, and this is when I was younger, in middle school. And finally, one day when I was old enough, I was just like, I can't believe like I was ever ashamed of this. And I was like, I'm going to make sure that like I can never be ashamed, and I want everybody to see this. So, and I want to have to stick up for myself and my family next time when someone says, are you Jewish? And say, yeah. And then on top of that tree, I just got, and I'm still in the process, I'm going back on Saturday to finish it for another 5 hours. It goes up my leg on top of my knee, and it's these branches, and it's kind of like a zoom in of the tree on my ankle. And it's a young bird on the bottom and a more mature, older bird on the top. And just everything about it, it represents my grandma, and that's why I got it, as my guardian angel. And like she said when we were reading that poem, The Youth I Never Had, just everything about it was just crazy. There's numbers in it I mean, you could go on and on about all the things.
I understand, yeah.
I'm so interested to know this. I'm just curious, of those of you who raised your hand that you had a tattoo, how many of you have some Jewish symbol represented in the tattoo itself? Or in your mind is a Jewish tattoo, even if it may not be obvious to us? So does anybody else want to just say something about when you chose to get that tattoo, you said, I'm getting a tattoo. That's the first thing. Then you said, what am I going to get? Oh, I'm going to get something that's Jewish, that's symbolic Jewishly. I'm really curious, A, if you can share, if you're willing to share what it is, and sort of what was that moment for you?
Yeah.
I have a high, which means life, and that is very specific to when I was hit by banana spud. My parents got me a high necklace, and then during my surgery that I had when I was young, my mom wore that necklace, so then signifying life and getting through that surgery. So mine has very specific significance for that.
Is your high the same as the necklace?
Yes.
So is mine. The necklace I wear is the same as the high on my wrist. So it's kind of cool. Which side does it say?
Anybody else wanna? Anyone else willing to share that it is? Yeah.
Mine's not a symbol of my Judaism or anything like that. I've wanted a tattoo since I was young. I didn't get my first tattoo until I was 35. And I think people who don't have tattoos are trying to relate. Obviously, people who have tattoos, there is some sort of pain that you go through getting this done to your body. And when you said, why don't you wear Star of David? Why don't you wear Chai? I have a ton of jewelry at home. I can put them on, take them off, whatever. It doesn't mean anything. Sometimes it sits in a safe for years and I don't even remember. But when I remember when I got my tattoo and what it means and with the pain and everything, I think that symbolizes a lot. The pain that you went through to get this done to your body helps you remember why you got it.
So this is very curious to me, and one of the people in the film alluded to this, and it disturbs me a little bit about the sense that being Jewish is all about pain and suffering, or they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. Or, at the other part of the joke is the fast days, which are, they tried to kill us, we lost. But I'm not trying to be flip here. I really want to understand, because there seems to be some sense that by doing something that's a little bit painful, and I'm speaking specifically about the Jewish symbols. Maybe this spills over, I don't know, but that when you mark yourself Jewishly and it causes you some discomfort on the one end and probably a lot of more discomfort on the other, that somehow that's symbolic of what it is to be a Jew. And so, that concerns me, because there's so much, to me at least, about being Jewish that has nothing to do with pain and suffering and oppression and persecution, but the beauty of what it is to be part of a people and, what makes meaning in the world, etc. So I don't know if anyone's willing to talk about that, if you want to talk about that, but that's the part that makes me nervous,
I mean, I guess I never really thought about the pain aspect when I'm going to get tattooed. I don't go in there saying, like, I'm Jewish, my people have been affected, and this is my way of showing that I can go through pain just like they have. I don't think that's ever a concept going into it. I think it's just one of those, you got to deal with this so we can get to the good stuff, I guess it just was one of those things that never really crossed my mind as being the pain of being tattooed, the actual dragging of a needle across your skin. Make it sound so pretty, right? I never really gave it symbolism. It never meant anything to me. It was just, that's the process you go through to get a tattoo.
I don't think it's the actual pain itself. I think it's what you go through in life to get what you want to do and get to that better place and get the things you have and have the family you have and the trials and tribulations you have to go through in order to get what you want. And I think